What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with a look at Week 4 of the United Football League season on DraftKings. You're going to want to use the players that I talk about in this video in your UFL lineups this week if you are playing UFL Fantasy Football. And we are getting one of the best running backs in spring football history back for the Houston Roughnecks this week. That's Mark Thompson. He's missed the first 3 weeks of the season for the 0-3 Houston Roughnecks. But Mr. Thompson on his personal Twitter account has put out there that he is back on the field this week and is excited to get after it with the guys. Head coach Curtis Johnson of the Roughnecks has spoken about his displeasure with the team's performance to start the season, how they're going to make some changes in the offense, and getting their best playmaker in Mark Thompson back absolutely is a step in the right direction for the Roughnecks this week, in my opinion. They are 3-point underdogs at home against the Arlington Renegades here in week number 4. But let me just explain to you why Thompson being back for the Roughnecks is such a huge boost here. There isn't a single running back in the league right now that is averaging more than 10 fantasy points per game on the ground. League-wide, running backs are averaging just under 3.3 yards per attempt, and they're scoring rushing touchdowns at an absolutely atrocious rate this season. Mark Thompson was the single best running back in all of spring football in 2023. That's across both the XFL and USFL seasons. He played in 8 games. He had 655 yards rushing and 14 rushing touchdowns. That was good for 18.7 rushing fantasy points alone per game. Thompson had about a 65% rush share of Houston Gambler team rushes in the games that he played and about a 9% target share as well. So you're looking at another 3 to 4 targets per game for Thompson on average, on top of about 16 to 18 rushes if Curtis Johnson keeps the usage the same for Thompson here with the Houston Roughnecks in 2024. And I see really no reason why he wouldn't do that. This is the same Mark Thompson that he had last year on the Gamblers, and they're struggling. They want to lean on an offensive weapon, the offensive player of the year from the USFL in 2023. So I would say, although betting markets are against the Roughnecks this week, I think Mark Thompson is the best running back to slot into your lineups, and he's my RB1 this week. He may even be the only running back I deploy in my lineup this week because the rushing production and the fantasy production for running backs in UFL through the first month of the season here has been pretty poor. So Mark Thompson, Houston Roughnecks, my favorite play on the board, and I think you want to get him into your lineups here in week number 4. Normal agenda of the show. Who else, right? The Birmingham Stallions are the number 1 team in spring football once again here in 2024. Look poised to win their 3rd championship in a row in spring football. And Adrian Martinez emerged as their clear starting quarterback in week number 3 in their game against the Memphis Showboats in an absolute dominant victory for their home opener. Martinez took all of the snaps at quarterback. That's the first time this season either of Adrian Martinez or Matt Corral played the entire game. So I would like to think that his performance has earned him the QB1 job moving forward. And at just $9,300 here on DraftKings, he's going to be quite the deal compared to some of the other quarterbacks that we have to choose from. Coming in like $1,200 cheaper than AJ McCarron, for example. I think Martinez will be a great play with the Stallions being the biggest favorite on the board and also carrying the highest implied team total because this Stallions Defenders game carries the highest total in betting markets in week number 4 as well. So definitely like AJ McCarron as another quarterback that you can play this week, but Adrian Martinez is going to be my favorite play. McCarron's Battlehawks are 7-point favorites in their game against the Memphis Showboats to open the weekend, and St. Louis has the 2nd highest implied team total at just over 26 points on the board here. So absolutely still think St. Louis Battlehawk stacks are in play here. They've just started to become a little cost prohibitive if you look at the cost of AJ McCarron and his top wide receivers in Hakeem Butler, Darius Shepard, and Marcel Aitman. Now we are getting Ja'Cour Pearson back for the St. Louis Battlehawks here in week number 4. He's not yet in the DraftKings player pool, but Pearson was the primary slot receiver for the 2023 Seattle Sea Dragons in the XFL and led the entire league in targets in a very pass-heavy attack last year. So I think he has a good chance to slide in and be a very productive wide receiver for the Battlehawks, but we got to keep an eye on their depth chart for week number 4, and we got to keep an eye on whether or not DraftKings adds him to the player pool here for us as well to make him an option. Arlington favored by 3 against Mark Thompson's Houston Roughnecks. And then the San Antonio Brahmas are slight 1-point favorites at home against the Michigan Panthers this week. This is the other situation at quarterback that I think will come into play pretty heavily this weekend, guys. Quentin Dormady is minimum price for a quarterback in spring football, $6,000, and he's going to be starting for the Brahmas because unfortunately Chase Garbers is out for the season. He is on injured reserve and will not be playing for the Brahmas any longer after suffering a right wrist injury last week against the St. Louis Battlehawks. We have been very impressed with the efficiency of the Brahmas offense through the first 3 weeks of the season, and it'll be up to Dormady to keep that going here in week number 4. We saw Dormady play pretty well for the Orlando Guardians in limited opportunities in 2023. By my grades, I would say Dormady was about the 6th best quarterback across both spring leagues last year, averaged 7.4 yards per attempt passing, had 10 passing touchdowns in 7 games for the Orlando Guardians in 2023 XFL, and also did quite a bit on the ground for the Guardians in his games. Dormady averaged 4 yards per carry, had 4 rushing touchdowns, and basically had about 5 rushes per game. So there's definitely some element of a dual threat with Quentin Dormady here in the UFL that we should be aware of. And at a $6,000 price tag, playing Dormady at quarterback will definitely allow you to pay up for all of the best skill players at the other positions. And I suspect this is something you will see a lot of UFL DFS players do this week, just purely to exploit the cheap price of a starting quarterback in this league here in week number 4. Wide receivers. Through 3 weeks of play, we have some great data on who has been the best wide receivers in the league, and only one of them is really priced appropriately, I would say. Jontre Kirkland has the highest target share, highest air yard share out of any pass catcher in the league, and that is why he carries a $10,000 price tag here on DraftKings for the San Antonio Brahmas and their very pass-heavy offense. He's got a relatively low average depth of target of just 7.7 yards compared to a lot of his other counterparts here because he's running a lot of shallower routes in this Brahmas offense, but the opportunities are undeniable. 9+ targets in every single game, and we saw that get up to a double-digit target amount last week in San Antonio's close loss to the St. Louis Battlehawks in week number 3. So I think you can deploy him because we have a lot of cheap options around him. I would even argue some mispriced wide receivers around him. Kirkland with the highest weighted opportunity on the board this season for UFL pass catchers. The wide receiver with the second highest weighted opportunity on the board is going to be Arlington Renegades wide receiver Tyler Vaughns, who is still just $6,100 despite his big game last week, 13 targets, over 100 yards receiving, and a touchdown from Luis Perez that he was able to haul in. He's got the second best weighted opportunity of any pass catcher in the league, 28.4% target share in this Renegades offense, 40% of team air yards at a very, very healthy 13.4 yard average depth of target, running a ton of routes outside the numbers, so a highly valuable role in fantasy football as well for Tyler Vaughns in the Arlington Renegades offense. So him, Jontre Kirkland, and then if we are going to be playing our Adrian Martinez, we probably don't want to forget Deon Cain, who has the third best weighted opportunity in the entire UFL and obviously the best weighted opportunity in the Birmingham Stallions offense with a 25% target share and 37.5% share of Birmingham's team air yards from both quarterbacks this season. Deon Cain with a very healthy 15.5 yard average depth of target and also running a tremendous amount of his routes from outside the numbers. So we can absolutely exploit the mispricing with Cain and with Vaughns. We still have 4,500 per player remaining. We have our choice of really any defense that we want here. The Stallions might be cost prohibitive if we're playing Jontre Kirkland, but if we come off Jontre Kirkland, we can play my favorite wide receiver on this slate. Isn't going to necessarily project at the top of anybody's fantasy projections, but due to his opportunities in recent weeks and the fact that he has not yet scored a touchdown on the season, I am a big fan of Jonathan Adams, who is my number 1 underperforming wide receiver in the UFL here for week number 4. Saw him get 11 targets last week in a trailing game script against the Birmingham Stallions. Once again, we'll be in a trailing game script against the St. Louis Battlehawks in the first game of the weekend here. Jonathan Adams started the season behind Dawood Davis in opportunities from Case Cookus and now Troy Williams in this Showboats offense. But his target share has increased over the last couple of weeks. His air yard share has increased over the last couple of weeks. And perhaps the biggest thing to be aware of here is he's underperforming his expected fantasy point total by about 13 PPR points over the last 3 weeks of play, the only 3 weeks of the UFL season. So he's basically due to score a touchdown at his usage rate for the Showboats. If Cookus and the Showboats finally start to be more efficient in the passing game, Jonathan Adams is the wide receiver who's most likely to benefit from that. So for high-risk contests this week, which is really all anybody should be playing in UFL anyway, Jonathan Adams at $8,200 I think is a really strong play on the board. And if you get him in here, you've got $5,800 for a flex spot, and there are plenty of plays in that price range, whether they're wide receivers, tight ends, or some cheap running backs that I do think you can use to fill out the rest of your lineup here. So this is kind of how I feel about the UFL this week. I think these are some of the best plays that you can use. I do think as far as running backs go, just once again, I'm going to be playing Mark Thompson and probably forgetting about every other running back in the league after that. But for opportunity's sake, we still have a virtual split between CJ Marable and Ricky Person Jr. for running back touches in the Stallions offense. And because of the pricing disparity here, I do think Ricky Person Jr. is becoming the better DFS play at just $6,600 versus the $9,200 we have for CJ Marable. St. Louis being the second biggest favorite on the board. We saw last week a virtual split in touches between Mateo Durant with his 8 rushing attempts and 3 targets, and Jacob Sailors with his 7 rush attempts and 2 targets. So you're kind of flipping a coin here, not just with the Stallions offense at the top of the betting market totals here, but also the Battlehawks. So I feel like we're not going to have that issue with Thompson, which is another big reason why I'm into him this week. With the other offenses in the league, we have some split backfields, but they've been far less efficient. Devion Smith and Letty Brown basically splitting opportunities for the Arlington Renegades. One opportunity that I think is exploitable might be with the San Antonio Brahmas. Anthony McFarland, priced at a ridiculous $8,900, has not been practicing this week, so he's actually trending out for the Brahmas here in week number 4, which means that John Lovett is probably going to see the biggest bump in usage, and if he's a starting running back at just $5,700 for a slightly favored offense, he's probably a decent DFS play at that number and allows us to pretty much do anything we want. Notice he may even fit in the dummy lineup I put together here for you as well, so that might be a good direction to go. On the Michigan side, we saw Matthew Colburn return last week for the Panthers, and he had 9 rush attempts, 2 targets, so that really ate into Wes Hill's dominance of the attempts in this offense. 15 carries for Hills, 3 targets. I think at his price tag starting to become a little cost prohibitive at his lack of production. So another kind of team that I think I'm off of for running backs this week, and that really leaves the DC Defenders and the Memphis Showboats. Cameron Harris, week 2 got a little dinged up. Darius Hagan's benefited from that. From a usage standpoint, Harris went back to the starting running back in week number 3, but still not really producing on the ground whatsoever. And then for Memphis, you have Darius Victor, who was a little dinged up last week, still played a decent amount of snaps, didn't really have a ton of opportunities to touch the ball. And Titus Swen right behind him, I think, as the next man up. Saw more opportunities, didn't really do anything with his touches. Got you 9 points at close to the minimum price. So I guess that's okay, again, this week if he's going to be the guy, but big underdog against the Battlehawks in the first game of the weekend. So I'm not sure I want to lock up a running back spot or a flex spot with Swen in the first game of the weekend here. So we're searching for efficiency at the running back position if we're playing UFL DFS at this point. I think Mark Thompson is our best shot to get it, despite his high $8,700 price tag. Best spring football running back we've seen in recent spring football history over the last 4 or 5 years here. I think you want to buy into him here to start his 2024 season in your lineups this week. That's going to do it for me here for week number 4 of the UFL. As always, we have projections for the UFL slate available to our Discord subscribers completely free. So if you want access to those are posted every Friday evening after depth charts come out for all the games in the UFL. Click the link below the video here to join our Discord if you're not a member already, and you'll get access to those as soon as I post them. And as always, good luck in UFL week number 4, and we'll be back next week to talk to you about week number 5.